What's up, poker people? My name's Wes, and this is my poker vlog. Today we got a cash game session for you. It's on the live stream of Prime Social in Houston, Texas. I'm gonna buy into the game for $5K, and I'll tell you right now, there's gonna be a lot of bluffing in this game. If you guys don't already know, I host a game on Wednesdays and Saturdays at Prime Social in Houston, Texas. And this is the live stream that we have every Wednesday and Saturday. You can watch it live on the Prime Social YouTube channel. In this hand, we have Josue raising with ace-9 suited in late position. And I wake up with ace-king in the small blind. I give it a 3-bet to $75. Josue decides to call. Let's see a flop dealer. Now I do completely miss this flop, but it's really unlikely that he's going to have anything that really connects hard with this. I could c-bet, but I decided to check and do a delayed c-bet. Little did I know he had hit his card on the turn. I really assumed at this point that I would have the best hand. Most of the time, I would think any overpair would bet this flop when I checked to him, and it's just unlikely that he's going to have a 9 enough of the time. So I thought the c-bet would take it down. So when he called, I just assumed that he had some sort of draw. And on this river, I don't need to bluff any of the missed draw hands, but I did think there were some of those hands that he might hero call against me. Since I had a delayed c-bet, it seems like I could have some sort of ace-high hand. Again, if he has a bad ace-high hand, maybe he doesn't call, but I didn't think it hurt to bet here, so I did bet $125. He grabs out a call, and then he thinks about it. At this point, I actually thought he had a hand like ace-queen. Maybe ace-queen of hearts that missed a flush draw. So I tell him, I said, okay, I do think you're going to call, and I think I have the best hand. I actually wanted, if he calls with ace-queen and he sees my ace-king, for him to realize, wow, he really thought that I had ace-queen here. Little did I know he had a pair, and this actually got in his head, and he started thinking, wow, damn, he definitely has an overpair then. So a little bit of my misread of his hand got him to fold when I started to talk to him, and he just lays down top paired, and I showed it. I said, yeah, I had a pair of threes. That's what you had, right? He's like, no, I had a pair of nines. I said, well, that's 2 pair. Bad read, but good play. I'm going to take this time to explain that this is not the normal Prime Social dealing crew. So they are not totally familiar with doing the action tracking. They have done action tracking before. And with this software, I'm going to point out that if you make any small mistake, which is going to happen in the action tracking, it can cause these graphics to be wrong, which will happen later. I'm not going to go probably pointing out every time that it's wrong. Just listen to what I'm saying, what the bet sizes are, what the situation is, because I will definitely be more accurate than the software. So in this spot, I see a late position raise from Garrett. And then I see Josue from the small blind 3-bet. And I look down at pocket eights, and I at first was like, wow, what do I do with this? I guess I just fold. And I started evaluating the situation. And I thought Garrett could be wide, raising from the cutoff. He doesn't have to have that strong of a hand, which means Josue could know this and could be 3-betting from the small blind with a hand as bad as a weak ace. He could have other hands. He could have some pocket pairs as well. So I decided to go ahead and 3-bet. I make it $300, and it puts Josue in a spot where he has to decide what to do. Little did I know he has an unfoldable hand, pocket jacks, for his stack size. He starts the hand with $700. I made it $300, so there's basically no chance he's going to call and see a flop and then decide. He just has to decide, does he go with it here or not? I assumed if I had seen his hand, I would have thought he is going to snap call and let's see 5 dealer. But he's thinking about it, and I'm not sure why. When we talked about the hand later, he basically felt like his hand was face up, which I thought was really surprising. He's telling me here, I mean, I'm pretty sure you know what I have. And I was like, I have no idea what you have. Why would I know exactly what you have? And he felt like it was obvious he had exactly jacks. So a little bit of a narrow thinking in this hand by Josue that his hand was face up, when actually I think he could have been way wider in the small blind. I'm not sure why he thought I should know if he had exactly jacks. If I did, I definitely wouldn't have 3-bet him. I guess technically it's a 4-bet. So he gets a little bit in his own head again here and thinks that I have to have an overpair. I'm sure he knows that I could have a hand like ace-king, but he doesn't really feel like flipping or going against that range. So he's going to end up Folding pocket jacks pre-flop. Oh my God. I could not believe when I looked at this hand later and saw that he folded jacks. That is not what I was trying to do. I was not trying to get an overpair to fold. If you guys don't already follow me on Twitter, please do, at Wes Cutshall. I put all my notifications there for when I'm having live streams and when I put out new vlogs. This hand starts with William straddling to $12. Sanket's going to call. It's going to fold around over to Garrett. Garrett's going to make a raise to 40. Both William and Sanket call, and we're going to a flop. William hits his ace. He's got to be happy that he hit an ace, but he could be worried about Garrett having a bigger ace. But this flop is going to check over to Sanket. He's going to make a bet on this flop. This is going to get Garrett out of the hand. And now William has to decide to do what to do with ace 5. He decides to call, as would I. Turn is a 9 of hearts. Doesn't change a whole lot about this board. William's going to check. Now Sanket's going to check. Going to the river. The river's the 10 of hearts. The board has gotten fairly connected. There's no reason for William to bet here. He just checks, and it's over to Sanket to decide what to do. He decides to bet. He's going to bet $150. So now William has an ace. He has top pair, but he has a bad kicker. He's going to lose to all the 2-pair combinations and any hand that has an 8 in it. But he's not sure what hand would limp in, bet this flop, check the turn, and bet the river. And I agree, it doesn't make a lot of sense. William's going to call, it looks like. He calls 150, and Sanket shows King Deuce of Hearts? What is he doing? Betting the flop with no pair, no draw. I guess I understand checking the turn and then bluffing the river, but this is why you don't play King Deuce. There's no straddle in this hand, so it's just going to be $6 to go. Billy's going to decide to limp in the hijack. I would probably just raise it up. There's not many hands I'm going to limp in late position. Sanket's going to punish him. Sanket's got Jack 4 suited. He did not learn his lesson with the King Deuce suited. This is another hand that you're basically only playing to make a flush or some weird 2-pair, and that just doesn't happen very often. Justin has an easy call with King Jack. Both Josh and Billy are also going to call, and we're going to a flop 4 ways. A jack high flop would be really interesting here, but instead it's ace high with 2 hearts. Sanket has a flush draw. Now Billy's going to lead out instead of checking to the pre-flop raiser. Billy leads 50, Sanket calls 50, Josh calls 50, and I'm going to assume Justin just has to get out of the way, and he does. Go into a turn. Turn is a jack of diamonds, so now Sanket has a pair and a flush draw. But it's an ace-high board. This pair may not be any good. Josh is going to now lead the turn for $150. That's a pretty weird move. You have to wonder, did he flop something big and decided now to make his move, or did he actually turn something? But Sanket has a strong enough hand. He doesn't really have to worry just yet about what Josh has. He's just trying to hit a heart on the river, and he does. Queen of heart on the river. That also reduces the number of bigger flush draws he might be up against. Now only the ace high and king high flush draw beat him. Josh looks like he wants to bet. It's a pretty surprising way to play this hand if you have hearts, because why would you just check and then lead the turn? I guess if you had a hand like ace X of heart and you start to see that the board is 3 to a straight and some other cards could make, a one-liner. I'm not really sure what he would do here with a hand like ace 5 of hearts, but he does bet 250 on the river, and now Sanket has a pretty easy call. There's only 2 flushes that beat him. He does seem to be unsure. He is believing that this is flush over flush, or at least thinks it's likely or possible. He's not ready to just snap call, but he does call, And Josh shows 8-9 of spades for one pair. Does everybody just bluff all the time in my game? Billy has the $12 shuttle on in this hand, which means I'm going to be first to act. And I look down at the birds, pocket aces. I'm going to go ahead and raise it up here. I make it 40 to go, and I continue telling my, what I'm sure is very interesting story, disguising the strength of my hand. And it folds around to Billy, who straddled. Billy's reaching for chips. Wow, he's going to 3-bet to 312. I continue telling my story while I decide I'm just going to call. Watch Billy's reaction when I call. He did not expect me to call. I don't know what he expected at that point. You can see his complete body position change. He sits up like, what? I think he thought he was just going to take it down at that point. Now, I didn't notice this live, but it's something that we can now go back and watch and see. It's a jack-high board. I've got pocket aces. I got the backdoor straight and flush draw. The only hand I'm worried about is pocket jacks, and it's possible with that huge overraise that he has jacks. He c-bets a reasonable size of 300 on the flop, and I call. And the turn's a 4, so even if he does have pocket jacks somehow, I have outs. Could hit an ace, or I could make a straight on the river. And Billy's going to bet again, but he only bets 300. So the thing about slow playing, if that's what you would consider me doing, is that at some point you're going to have to fast play. You're going to have to get more money in the pot. And if he had bet something like 600 or 700, I probably would have just called. But I felt like this was the perfect chance for me to take over the action, start to decide how much money is going to go into this pot. It can also look like I think he's bluffing. It doesn't matter if he's bluffing or not, but he might think, wow, since I bet the same amount, which was a small amount, maybe he's trying to take this away with a hand like ace-king. So he might end up calling with any pair that he has. So I make it 1,200. He's got 300 out there, and Billy makes the call. He didn't leave a lot behind. I was kind of surprised that he just called, because he left himself, I believe it's 1,400 behind. And on the river, he's going to check to me. It's a very safe river, the 7 of diamonds. If he has pocket jacks, he's just going to get a double up. I'm not even worried about that. I'm just going to take my time before I put them all in. And I hope that he has a hand like, I don't know, ace jack or queens that will call. He snap calls. I show aces. Billy had pocket kings. I wasn't shocked, but I was kind of surprised that he didn't get the money in sooner. I do wonder if I had played a little bit faster pre-flop, if I would have scared him away based on how he did play his hand, or if he would have just gotten it in and we could have saved people a lot of time. But aces versus kings, simply a cooler. Hostway has pocket queens under the gun. It's always nice to have a hand this strong under the gun. There's no straddle, so the big blind is 6. Hostway raises to 20. Now, this might be an okay raise size in a lot of games, but I think he should be raising much larger in this game. Look at all these deep stacks. Now, Hostway isn't as deep, but the point is these guys are more likely to call, trying to play a pot against each other, not necessarily Hostway. So you're going to get a wider range of hands such as King 6 and Ace 4 offsuit than if you had raised to maybe 30, 35, where you could maybe narrow down the ranges and maybe get the hand heads up or 3 ways. But now we're 4 ways to the flop. It's a super safe flop of 7 deuce deuce. Hostway decides to c-bet. He's going to bet 50 into 84, which is a good size. And these garbage hands are going to get out of the way. And it's over to Garrett. Garrett was the last player to call pre-flop. He's going to check Hostway's stack size before making a check raise to 200. So if you're Hostway, this is the perfect spot. When you have a hand like queens, that bigger raise pre-flop, if he had made it would make it easier to get it all in, which is what you want to do with this hand when you are a more short stack player at this table. So now that Garrett has raised to about a quarter of Hostway's stack, this is the perfect chance to get it all in and get your double up. Garrett could definitely have hands like pocket tens that want to deny equity against big cards, and he can make this raise here, just trying to protect his hand. So this is where Hostway's go. He folds! Hostway folded, and Garrett had 9-8 offsuit for 9 high. Now, I talked to Hostway later about this hand, and he basically said the guy's supposed to have a deuce or pocket sevens every time. But clearly, that's not true. Little did he know that Garrett actually plays for the Bluffalo Bills. You can't tell, but under that sweatshirt, he's actually a pretty bluff guy. On the gun +1, I've got 8-9 suited. I raised it up to 25. Josh is going to re-raise to $75. Chad's going to fold, but the graphics are incorrect. Somehow it says that Chad 3-bet and Josh's hand is never going to get registered. And it's going to look like Chad plays this entire hand. But really, it's me, William, and Josh. Will calls the 3-bet. I call, and we're going to a flop. And it's a great flop for me. Open-ended with a flush draw. I was going to check raise this, but Josh just checks behind. Now, when the king of spade hits the turn, I could bet, but my thought was a hand that Josh would 3-bet and then check has a lot of kings in it. Ace, king, king, queen, especially hands that didn't have any diamonds or hearts. He might decide to check behind. So I decided to just check call this turn card instead of being aggressive and leading out and getting raised or check raising or anything. So I check, he bets 125. William's going to call, and I'm going to call, and we're going to a river. The river is the ace of diamonds. I make my flush. It's not the best diamond card that could have come because it could scare hands away that had maybe one pair or even a 2-pair hand that don't include an ace. But it checks to me, and I'm going to bet 320. Now, it shows that William is all in. That is not true. He and Josh both have a couple thousand behind. So I bet into Josh after he bet the turn, and I bet 320. Josh has a decision to make on what to do. He's eventually going to decide to call. And now it's over to William. And I was very surprised when he check raised 2 players on this river. Now, since the graphic system thinks he's all in, it's not actually going to show the exact raise size, but I think it was $1,100. So now I start thinking about what hand would play this way. He checks the flop, calls the turn, and now check raises the river. Does he have an expectation that Josh would bet? That's the first thing. To check raise for value, you have to have an expectation that somebody would bet. Well, Josh did delay c-bet, and both of us called, so he's got 2 players who called the turn who might actually have a hand that can bet this river, and now he's check raising. My thought was there are not a lot of hands that would probably not bet this turn. If he has a king-high flush, he'd probably lead out on this turn. But a hand like Queen Jack of diamonds might check. A hand like Jack 7 of diamonds might check. But during this time, I was thinking, man, there really aren't that many flushes that beat me that would play this way because they would probably bet the turn and not just call. But in the end, I just thought it was such an obvious value bet that I was just going to make a hero fold of a 9-high flush. And he was going to say, yeah, I had queen 6 of diamonds or, some random queen high flush that he decided to check raise. So I do make the fold, and Josh is going to fold as well. And William shows 9-8 of clubs. Complete bluff. Welcome to Bluffalo, Wesley. The graphics for this hand are off a bit because of the action tracker maybe made a small mistake, but basically there's a $75 raise or possibly a re-raise. Garrett has 7-6, William has queens, and Sanket also calls, and we're now on a flop of ace, queen, 5. Garrett has 3 to a straight flush, but William has a set of queens on this board. It's checked over to William, who's in position, and he bets 125. Now it's on Sankit to decide what to do. He's going to be in trouble no matter what happens because William has a set of queens. Sankit is not going to call. He is going to re-raise to 325. Garrett gets out of the way, and William's like, how much more do you have? Can we get this all in right here? Anytime somebody stands up to see the board or see your stack, you're in trouble. Just a little tip for you guys. William's going to flat. He's in position, so he knows he can get some more money in on the next turn or on the river. And the turn is an ace. He's now got queens full of aces. Sankit shoves. William's going to Phil Hellmuth call with a pile of chips. Oh, the river's another ace? William's a little concerned, but Sankit had 9-7 high. 9-7. No pair, no draw, no outs, and now no chips. Sankit was planning a trip to Bluffalo, but he ran into some traffic and he never made it to his destination. Garrett's going to raise it up to $25 with King 4 suited. William's going to call with Jack 10. I'm going to call with Ace 8 of spades. And Josh wants to see the flop with 7-5 suited. We're going to go 4 ways to the flop. We got a wide range of hands here. Flop is King 4-10 with 2 spades. So Garrett flops 2 pair. Josh and I both flop a flush draw, and William has second pair. I'm going to go ahead and check. Josh checks, and we check it over to Garrett. He's going to make his c-bet of $60. William calls with second pair with no backdoor flush draw. I should probably be check raising this flop, but I decided just to call. And somehow Josh just folds a flush draw. Turns to 3 of clubs. This card doesn't help anybody. I'm still out of position with just a flush draw. Check it to Garrett, and he bets 225. It's kind of a big bet, but with an ace-high flush draw, I am not folding. We are way too deep to be folding any kind of nut draw, even though he bet almost pot. Just taking my time, acting like I'm not sure if I should call or not, when I know I'm never folding. See the river. And this is that awkward spot where you're now out of position with the nut flush on a paired board and you don't know how to get value exactly. Now against Garrett, since he is a member of the Bluffalo Bills, I decided to go ahead and check. He bets 500, which is a nice healthy bet, and I'm going to have to check raise him here. Some players might decide to just call, but I think this is a great spot to check raise. And how often are you guys in a game where check raising to 1200 to 1500 isn't the final bet? It's still possible that I could check raise here and Garrett could go all in, and I'd be in a tough spot on a paired board. But I was thinking, I think I need to check raise this for value and not be scared of the very rare full houses. So there's a purple chip in there, which is a $500 chip. That means that is a bet of $1,200. A little bit less than the 3x raise. At the time, I didn't think Garrett's hand range was all that strong. It's hard to have 2 pair on this board unless he has an overpair of aces. Of course, he has kings and 3s with any king queen, but I didn't think he had a set or a hand as good as king 10 or king 4 that could actually beat a lot of top pairs. I assumed at best he had a top pair hand and that he might not even have that good of a kicker. Garrett goes in the tank. He's got a pretty good hand. He can definitely beat all of my kings, but would I really be check raising a king in this spot? And it's at this point that I actually started to regret my check raise on a paired board, because I realized if he shoved for his 4K stack, I'd be in a really tough spot where I would almost never have the best hand and it would only be a bluff catcher. But he does call. I show and he nods and says, yep, nice hand, nice hand. I think not raising on the river would be a little bit too tight. Although I did get scared when he tanked for so long. I think I should be raising there, and that sometimes I should be raising just knowing that I'm going to fold if he does go all in. I've got the $10 straddle on in this hand, and Han looks down at ace-jack offsuit under the gun. He's going to raise it up to $40. Josh is going to call with king-jack. Justin's going to get in there. Sergio's going to get in there with king-8 offsuit. And now Sahib has the real hand, ace-queen. He's going to make a big re-raise to 225. I like it a lot. Han doesn't snap call. He's thinking about this. He also wants to see Sahib's stack size. Han decides it's just not worth it. He thinks he doesn't have the best hand. Might lose a lot of money if he does hit an ace. That's going to get Josh to fold as well. But Justin wants to see a flop. Sergio makes a good fold. A fold he should have made the first time. And we're going heads up to the flop. On a king-high flop, Sahib should probably c-bet. Even though he missed, he does have some backdoor draws. But with ace-high here, he probably has the best hand. And the king is a good card that could scare a lot of players. They might fold a hand like pocket 7s or 8s, and he could just take it down. But Justin calls, so you gotta be worried about that king, or possibly a flush draw. Now Sahib hits the queen on the turn. I think I would just check here. You now have showdown value. You have a pretty good hand, but you can't beat a king. So he does check. It's over to Justin. Justin bets 400 and Sahib calls. I definitely would call on this turn. Justin could still be bluffing with a flush draw, but if he was, the flush just got there with the 10 of spades on the river. Sahib checks to Justin. Justin's going to fire. He's getting his chips together. And he bets $800 on this river. Now Sahib has to think about what hands he can beat. If Justin had weaker hands such as queen jack or queen 10, even queen king, all those hands just got there. If all he had was a flush draw, that also gets there, and he calls anyway, and Justin shows 7-6 of hearts. No pair, no draw, just complete air bluff, and Sahib sniffs it out and wins a big pot. Justin thought he had a bus ticket to Bluffalo, but it turns out that bus had a flat tire and he's going nowhere. After a few limps, Izzy's going to raise it up with ace-5 suited to $60. I'm in the big blind. I look down at ace-king. I'm definitely going to 3-bet. Now I decided to make it 140, which is not a very big 3-bet, which you should be able to tell what my strategy is now that you see that sizing. I am not trying to get anybody to fold. I want to play a slightly bigger pot with these gentlemen, and I have taken over the lead so I can bet all the flops if I want. And then the flop comes 9-8 deuce. I decided this is not the best flop for me to bet, so I decided to check, and it's over to Justin. Justin decides to bet $200, which gets Izzy out of the way, and now we're heads up. I'm not folding ace-king just yet. I'm going to call 200 and see what develops. Well, the turn is another deuce, but at least it doesn't bring in the flush draw, so if he was betting a draw, this turn card changes nothing. So if I checked and called the flop thinking I had the best hand, I'm probably going to check and call this turn card thinking I had the best hand. We've seen what Justin has been doing in this game with some of his failed bluffs. It's possible he's bluffing again. He bets $450. I'm going to take my time, and I'm going to call. The river's a king, even though it brings in the backdoor flush. I'm probably not folding now. Checks to Justin, and he shoves for $1,500, which is almost 2x pot. If I called all this way thinking ace king high was good, surely I'm good now. I call, and Justin had 7-5 of spades, a flopped flush draw with a gut shot that bricked out, and I pick up a 4.3K pot with ace king. And at this point in the night, I am up $8.4 thousand. Justin booked a flight to Bluffalo, but it has been delayed. Justin has a $25 straddle on in this hand, and it folds to Hahn on the button. He decides to go ahead and raise it on up with Queen 3 suited. It's not a great hand, but it folded to him on the button. He can maybe steal these blinds and straddles. But Josh has ace 8 in the small blind. He should probably be 3-betting, but he decides to call and steal flop. It's got a decent hand to steal flop with, but with as wide as Hahn could be on the button, I'd rather just 3-bet him and take it down. So now this brings Justin into the pot as well, and we are going 3 ways to the flop. The flop is ace 8 deuce with 2 diamonds. Josh flops 2 pair. Hahn has a queen high flush draw. Josh is just going to bet out $120 into 2 players on this board. Justin calls. Now Hahn has to decide what to do with the queen high flush draw. He decides to call. Turn is the 10 of clubs. Josh probably assumes he still has the best hand. Might as well keep betting. Pot's 570, so he's got to decide what size does he like to deny the draws and get value from worse hands. Josh is going to bet $350. Justin calls. He might have an ace as well. Does he have a big kicker to go with it? Hahn's going to call with his queen high flush draw. We are still 3-handed going to the river. The river is the 7 of diamonds. Hahn makes a flush. Josh decides to check, and it's over to Justin. Justin fires big. $1,000 on the river. Hahn can only be beat by 1 hand. Hahn snap calls. Josh folds, and Justin puts his cards straight into the muck. He had 6-5 for another busted flush draw that he bombed the river with. Justin's second flight to Bluffalo canceled. We get to the flop in this hand, and I have King Jack on a Jack 4-3 board. Justin's going to fire 150 after I checked. With top pair, second top kicker, you know I'm going to call. Call 150. We get heads up going to the turn. Turn is a 6. Does bring in some of the straight draws, but with top pair, I should still be good a lot of the time, unless Justin has an overpair. And he's going to bet the turn for $500. I don't think he'd do this if he had a big hand. If he turned to straight, for example, or if he had an overpair. I'm just going to call. I don't really know what to do other than call with my top pair. The river pairs the board. Not that scary of a card in my opinion. I check. Justin bets $800. I'm just sticking with my top pair being the best hand. He could have an overpair, but again, why did he bet the turn so big? I decide to call. I make the call, and Justin's cards again go straight into the muck. And this time we actually didn't see, the card reader did not pick up his hand. We don't know what he was bluffing with. Justin tried to send me a postcard from Bluffalo, but it was returned to sender. Sahib decides to raise it up to $50. I look down at ace-10 offsuit. Didn't want to just call. Decided to 3-bet to 125 to make sure we get this hand heads up. or at least attempt to get the hand heads up. People are folding around. It looks like we might accomplish our goal. And now we're in position against Sahib. The flop is Queen Jack 7. I just have a gut shot on this board. Sahib could have any of the Broadway cards. If he checks to me, I'm just going to check back. It's okay to have some checking hands here that can improve to be the best hand on the turn. The 8 actually makes me double gutted. Any 9 or any king will give me a straight. I would have bet this if he had checked to me, but now he's leading into me. I don't see any reason to raise, so I'm just going to call his 225. And the king on the river gives me the absolute nuts with no potential flushes out there. It's very unlikely that he would also have a hand like ace 10, so I can get some value if he decides to bet, which he does. He bets $550 on this river. And now I just have to decide what sizing to make. What are his most likely hands? I do think 2-pair makes up a huge portion of his hands here. King, queen, queen, jack, king, jack, etc. I think he would call a pretty sizable bet, but coming up with the right size based on what his hand looks like, what my hand looks like, is always tough. I decided to bet 2.1K with my rivered nut straight. Like I said, there's plenty of 2 pairs that he could have, possibly even sets that would pay me off. In the end, he does fold because he just had 6-5 offsuit. He turned an open-ended draw and decided to bluff the river. It did not work. Sahib ordered some Bluffalo wings, but they came out completely burned. Disgusting. So yeah, I had a pretty good night, up over 9K on the live stream. If you guys want to watch me do this again, I am streaming every Wednesday and Saturday on this live stream at Prime Social. You can check them out on their own YouTube channel. Be sure to follow me on Twitter for special announcements, and I will see you guys next time.